Good evening and welcome to We the People. This past week, Azim Premji transferred shares worth more than 8,000 crores to a charitable trust, propelling many of commentators in India to dub him as India's Bill Gates. It's brought the focus back on corporate philanthropy. But is philanthropy really becoming an increasing trend in big business? Does India's big business have a social conscience? And more to the point, can we really tell anybody, how they should be spending their money? In a sense, when we talk about corporate philanthropy, are we deflecting from what should have been the state's responsibilities and transferring them firmly and laying them at the door of private enterprise? On the program today, we look at whether India really has an art of giving, and we start with an interesting statistic. 40% of India's wealth is controlled by 5% of its households. That's something to think about. That said, can we expect and lay down parameters, almost moral parameters, for what people should do with their money? And what is the difference between philanthropy and checkbook charity? That's what we're going to look at on the program today. I want to start with Som Mittal. Mr. Mittal, CSR is a trendy phrase, corporate social responsibility. But there are an increasing number of cynical people who think it's just a way of avoiding income tax.
No, I think that's not true. And I think we should divide this into two parts. One is individual philanthropy versus corporate social responsibility. And when you give as a corporate, then you have to balance it by saying you have shareholders and so on. I think what Mr. Premji has given is his personal wealth, right, as distinct from corporate.
That's right.
And I would think that more and more it's happening now. People know. And they're not only giving money, they're giving their time, they're putting their best people there. And I think that's scarce. In case of this particular foundation, I think they're putting in enough money so that it can scale. Because we do a lot of stuff and we make a difference to this person and that person. But I think this particular move is something that can scale. So you take one area, focus on it, put the money, put the people behind it, and make it scale.
But do you agree with those who say that we do not really have a genuine culture of philanthropy? While we have an age-old tradition of daan, for example, which has always been part of our subculture, we don't actually have institutionalized philanthropy.
Well, I think this became more visible because it was given. But I think if you just look at our own sector where people really came from middle class and they got great valuation. IT in particular. And hence, I think at individual levels, a lot of people are giving, right? In this particular case, it was very large amount, so it's visible. I think people have been giving all through this time. And I think time is also what they're giving in. And I think you'll see more and more of that happening. Because today, many of these industries are debt-free, right? You're not going to be investing this into further expansions. And I think all this leads to saying, what am I going to do with my money? I'm running it on a professional basis. My children would be there not because they are my children, but they have to earn their seat. So I think that's a big change that's happening now.
And that's a huge change because the Indian propensity is usually to leave everything for your children. Let me get Rohini Nilekani up in the screen, joining us from Bangalore today, another very prominent philanthropist. But Rohini, you interestingly described yourself as an accidental philanthropist. What do you possibly mean by being an accidental philanthropist, given the amount of focus you've devoted to the energy you place in the organizations you run?
Yeah, well, I became an accidental philanthropist, but I was not at all accidental about the activism and the work that I was engaged in. But obviously, as Nandan says, he became an accidental entrepreneur and we were able to come into the kind of wealth that we had not imagined. Then that's how I turned into a philanthropist. But I think I would have always been working in this space regardless.